Instagram, YouTube, and every other social media thing that you can think of. And, we've got something going on tonight. Bryce Kuhn is with us from 247sports.com. Bryce, formerly Georgia Tech writer and a guy who covered Georgia Tech for 247 Sports. But man, have you ever upgraded, headed down to Baton Rouge, and now you're going to be working with 247 Sports
Mhm.
covering LSU. Kind of
Yeah,
exciting for you. Congratulations, Bryce.
I appreciate that. No, it's going to be a lot of fun. I like how you said upgrade there. I don't think we have any Georgia Tech fans watching this program,
Yeah,
so
probably not.
I don't think we're going to hurt any feelings by saying that. But no, I appreciate it as always, and always good to be on with you guys.
We're going to talk a little bit about, of course, the big game coming up. Georgia TCU coming up 7:45, I believe, is the official kickoff time for the game tonight from SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, California. Now, technically,
Mhm.
from what I understand, SoFi Stadium is not a domed stadium. It is a covered stadium. I understand. I've been corrected. And because, it's just got a big cover over the thing. It's still an open air stadium, but it's got a cover over it. And in fact, it's raining in Southern California, contrary to the song that says it never rains in Southern California. What a beautiful venue. I haven't been there. I've seen pictures and whatever. Man, it'd be cool to be there, wouldn't it? Could we beam over there? That would be
Mhm.
nice.
Mhm. No, that'd be awesome. That would be awesome. I've got family over there actually.
Oh, do you? Well, see, you
Mhm.
should have pulled the family card, and
Yeah.
somehow, some way. But I tell you, we were talking about Marvin James, our good buddy from WMAZ TV, Channel 13, and Macon, sports director there. I talked to him over the weekend. He said, I thought this place was civilized, but you can't find any sweet tea and no grits. He said, "What in the world?" Well, okay. you, you can take a man out of South Georgia, but you cannot take the South Georgia out of the man. Indeed.
That's true.
Yeah. So let's talk about this game tonight. Here we go. Georgia expected, I guess, kind of expected to be in this position as the season started. You never know. It's college football. Number one ranked team in the college football playoffs, and but no one. I think TCU was what, a 200-1 shot to even play
Mhm.
in the game tonight. What an interesting game. Georgia with that. I still don't know how they won that game over Ohio State. Georgia with that big win over Ohio State, and TCU just took it to Michigan, even though Michigan hung in there for the game. So, from your perspective, as you look at this, what do you think? What is your feelings about this game tonight?
Look, I think this is a game that you have, two teams with two different stories. Obviously, I like what you talked about, the expectation. Right before we hopped on, I was watching ESPN's College Game Day, the special version here on Monday afternoon. And I think one of the biggest things is Nick Saban hit the nail on the head. And how appropriate is that for Nick Saban to be on the panel for this game? When he talked about expectation and what does that mean for a team and how that can create a sense of doubt, a sense of pressure that most teams don't get, and that was the expectation for Georgia. I mean, we looked at the odds makers, the favorites, and what they were. I mean, Georgia was right up there. Now,
Yeah.
look, it's a team that was disrespected. Kirby Smart will say in different ways throughout the season. Getting bumped down after the going into the Tennessee game, having to prove their worth that game, but you flip the script and the reason why, look, I'm not a betting man, but that 13.5 point spread makes me really nervous because
Yeah.
TCU right now feels like the team of destiny. They're playing, they're just playing and having fun, playing loose. I mean, they don't really have anything to lose as a team, like you said, was not really expected to be in this position. And so, in my opinion, with this, when you look at what TCU can do, Max Duggan, I mean, Desmond Howard said it on set just a couple minutes ago. I mean, look, everyone wants to talk about Stetson Bennett and his story. What about
Yeah.
Max Duggan? I mean, the kid has an unreal story, and he's a fighter. And so I think it's two teams that are. It's going to be a fun matchup. I don't. It would really surprise me, Chris, if Georgia just walked in and walked out easy. I don't think this is going to be an easy game. If I think this is going to be a hard fought battle, even if it does become lopsided, because both teams, like you said in the semifinals, have seen what teams can do to come from behind and win. That truly, the game is never over until the clock hits double zeros.
Yeah, and this. To be honest with you, when the season started, and it seems like this season has gone by so fast, seemingly.
Oh yeah,
But I remember, the Oregon game, beginning of the season for the University of Georgia, and interviewing some guys, talking with some guys, and the consternation of facing Oregon, and then Georgia goes out and does what it does against Oregon, and then here goes the season, and Georgia, didn't play it was not perfect by any means, but they always found a way to win. This Georgia
Mhm.
team is a very interesting team in the fact that they need to be in a shootout with an opponent, they can be in a shootout. I mean, they can throw it and rip it, with amongst the best of them. Georgia scored 92 points in their last 2 games. So if Georgia
Yeah.
needs to do that, but if they need to slug it out down in the trenches and, run it up the middle and do their running game and clamp you down defensively, they can do that as well. And TCU, you stack up the two rosters. TCU just can't match Georgia across the board, with physicality and with the caliber of player. But in a game like this, I don't know, if that. I think maybe it eventually will matter. But and man, this is such an interesting game. I think if Georgia gets out and Georgia has one of those first quarters where they really, kind of dominate a little bit, it may be a
Mhm.
long night for TCU. But if TCU hangs in there, which I really anticipate they do, it's a
Yeah.
13 point spread for Georgia. Georgia favored by 13 points. I just think, my prediction is Georgia winning 37-14. To be honest with you, that's always my prediction. Because every time I predict that, Georgia wins. Not
All
not
right. You got to
necessarily
stick
by
with it
that
then, right?
score. So I can't move from 37 to 14. But man, it's going to be interesting. So Stetson Bennett, truly and honestly, if Georgia wins this game, let's go ahead and get the script ready. Let's write the book. Let's get the movie made.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, I think you might fit in to the role of Stetson Bennett. What do you think?
Oh man.
What do
Oh man. I do have to get my head shaved like he did earlier in the season.
Isn't that cool?
That's I couldn't pull it off. I couldn't do it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, obviously, I couldn't either. I couldn't either. What do you think now? Georgia's defense been a little vulnerable here
Mhm.
lately. Is Ohio State kind of, yeah, and LSU? The team you'll be covering, really took it to them. Scored a lot in the SEC game.
Mhm.
Proved Georgia was vulnerable, and Ohio State did as well in that game in the Peach Bowl. So, what do you think? What kind of adjustments is Georgia going to have to make defensively?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at how you want to beat Georgia, from an offensive to defensive perspective, is look, you go back to what Ohio State did. Ohio State had a lot of success running tempo against this Georgia defense. Georgia is at its best when its front seven can create constant pressure. And another thing that Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann and all the defensive staff, Will Muschamp, want to do is they want to rotate. We always talk about depth with Georgia and want to rotate that depth in. And it kind of feels like this is a situation where, TCU needs to model what Ohio State did and run tempo, not allow Georgia to be able to rotate. Um, what does that create? Well, it creates matchups on the outside where I think that Georgia can be a little susceptible with their secondary. Look, it's far fetched to say that this defense is as good as it was last year. Last year, you can really compare with the Hurricanes defenses in the 90s and the early 2000s. You can look at Alabama's in 2011. But with Georgia's defense in this, we know the strength is in the front seven with the linebacker play, the defensive line play. Keely Ringo is going to be, one of the top players taken in April in the draft. He will be. But I think that when you look at what TCU can do with Quentin Johnston, I mean, that kid is going to be the top receiver taken in this upcoming draft. Where this differs, Chris, is that TCU doesn't have the depth of weapons. They don't have as many tools in the tool chest to go to that Ohio State did. And look, Quentin Johnston's unreal. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is the best receiver in college football. So, what he was able to do, it reminded me a lot of that LSU game in 2019 in the SEC title game. So, in this situation, if TCU can run tempo, if they can create positive, what does Kirby Smart always preach? create chaos, disrupt, and create negative plays. If TCU gets on a roll and a rhythm, that's when Georgia starts to get in trouble because they can't substitute. Jalen Carter has to play, more snaps than Kirby Smart and then would want him to and where he's conditioned to play. So it's just one of those things where it's kind of, push comes to shove. TCU's really good at doing tempo. Georgia's a really good defense, and these two kind of Goliaths are going to meet. And it'll be interesting to see. I think that's going to be a telling sign of how it goes.
And, TCU has had some really close calls,
Mm-hmm.
during this season. There have been several games when they were behind, and Georgia, I think, only 2 times has been behind going into the fourth quarter. Ohio State and then the game in Missouri. But generally, Georgia, is ahead, and that kind of thing. Um, it just, for me, obviously it comes down to what it always comes down to. Who's going to limit mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
who's going to have defensively, who's just going to play at a superior level. And for me, that's what it's going to come down to. Now, Stetson Bennett in that game, and good to have Randy Payne with us tonight. Stetson Bennett in that game against Ohio State threw for 398 yards. Stetson did what he does in the fourth quarter. Fantastic. 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Max Duggan in that TCU victory over Michigan, 51-45, threw for 225, 2 touchdowns. Did have 2 interceptions, but he also had 15 rushes for 57 yards. And he's a
Mm-hmm.
Heisman Trophy finalist, just like Stetson Bennett. And so, and again, as you mentioned, Quentin Johnson, 6 receptions, 163 yards against Michigan. Now, on the side with TCU, Kendre Miller, the running back, doesn't look like he really is going to play. And if he does, he's going to be very limited tonight. That's the number 1 rusher for TCU. But DeMarcado, Emir DeMarcado, rushed for 150 yards against Michigan. And so you got guys on both sides who are
Mm-hmm.
ballers, who are players. So if Georgia wins this game and Stetson Bennett does what Stetson Bennett does, how do you put into context the legacy of Stetson Bennett, not only at the University of Georgia, but in college football? I mean, it truly is amazing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, they've been showing the graphic all day. If you've been watching coverage of this game, I mean, what is it? 4 teams in the past 80 years have been able to do this. It's rare to go back to back, and to be able to
Yeah.
do it in today's day and age of college football. And I don't want to get into the argument of what age of college football is the best, but this is a different one where we're seeing how teams are built through NIL, through different things. It's really, really hard to do what Georgia has a chance to do tonight. So all that being said, I mean, look, when Stetson Bennett walks off the field tonight, win or lose, he's going to have one of the better legacies in Georgia football history. I think another thing is if they win this game, and that's going to be the key. If they win this football game, I mean, you really have to have a conversation about him being one of the top quarterbacks in SEC history, one of the top quarterbacks in Georgia history, a Heisman finalist. And I think to the casual fan and not Georgia diehards, Chris, you interact with the Georgia fan base much more than I do. I think that everyone's pretty much on the Stetson Bennett train, per se at this juncture. I mean, it's been 2 years. Um, but I think that you have to have a conversation about where he ranks all time in Georgia quarterback history. And look, there's been some really good ones, some really, really good ones.
Yeah.
But to be able to win 2 national championships, to win it against a juggernaut in Alabama, and if they can beat TCU tonight, beat the Cinderella team that seemingly nobody could beat, except for Kansas State, in the Big 12 title game.
Yeah.
But all that being
Yeah.
said, is I think that you have a serious conversation about where does he rank all time in Georgia football history. And listen, he'll never have to buy another drink in the state of Georgia. And another thing is,
Oh,
he will never. If the NFL doesn't work out for him and he coaching, he could have a car dealership somewhere. He could have anything because he's a legend in the state of Georgia for sure.
absolutely. And I think beyond this year, I really think Stetson has a place in the NFL. Now,
Yeah, I do
people
too.
have, they've compared him to Tom Brady. I don't think, not necessarily with his skill set, but just with his decision making, his maturity, on the field, and with how he conducts himself on the field. He's going to have to go a long way to get into the same category, obviously, as the goat. But I think beyond this, I think beyond
Mhm.
college, he has an opportunity in the NFL, and I hope he makes it. I hope he does. You want to. yeah, just it's a tremendous story. And if
It
Georgia
is.
wins tonight, it just puts the topping on all of it. Tremendous story. And
I
I
wanted to add
noticed
this real
today.
too quick, Chris, if I
Yeah, go
can,
ahead.
about
Yeah,
the NFL. Todd Monken had a great quote when he was asked about this. Monken's not available for interviews very often. I think it was leading up to the SEC title game. And someone said, look, you've coached in the NFL. You've been an offensive coordinator on multiple different teams. Like, you've seen NFL quarterbacks. Can Stetson do that? And the biggest trait that Monken harped on, it wasn't, anything athletically. It wasn't, his ability. It was the fact that Bennett has shown time and time again, even when he wasn't the starter, to be able to play with limited reps. And in the NFL, that's something that you have to have the ability to do. I mean, look, we see all the time guys thrust into the starting position due to injury or due to something late that happens, and not maybe they don't get a lot of first team reps. I was watching the last night's Cowboys and Commanders game, and Sam Howell, who started, I mean, they said in that game he had not thrown a pass. I think it was to Terry McLaurin all year. He completed his first pass to him. So Bennett's
right.
ability to step in, be well prepared where he has done that in college. Like, I think that at the very least he can go somewhere and get a backup spot somewhere. I mean, like,
Yeah.
to me, that and for Monken to say that, you kind of have to be like, okay, that guy knows what he's talking about. He's been a coordinator in the NFL. He's seen what it takes. He knows what practices are like and how limited opportunities backup quarterbacks get.
Yeah, and I think Stetson, I believe, if he gets 77 yards passing tonight, will have passed for 4,000 yards this season, and will pass Aaron Murray as the most
Wow.
prolific passer, or, of a quarterback for Georgia as far as passing yardage is concerned, and that's quite a big deal, and of course Aaron Murray has said that he believes that next to Herschel Walker in Georgia history, you got to put Stetson. Who you going to put above Stetson Bennett, especially if he wins the game
Mm-hmm.
tonight. ESPN's got that computer thing where they run the simulation of the games like 9 million times and try to come up with a computer giving a prediction of Georgia winning the game. And the computer predicts that Georgia will win the game 34-24.
Okay.
Yeah. So why
My
play the
my
game?
prediction was 38-24. So I feel,
Oh, wait, you good. Hey, you got a computer mind anyway. And and also, I did notice today, you know, uh, the world of college football can be crazy at times. We know
it
that.
can.
Also today, the early line for who's going to win the national championship next season has come out, believe it or not. And Georgia is favored to win the national championship
Mm.
next season. And Alabama's second. And then by the way, LSU that you'll be covering, they're pretty highly thought of as well. And in the odds for now, we're not through this season yet, but college football, man, I hate to see the season come to an end. You got that 8 months where you have some, you have the spring games and things like that. But man, let's just keep it going. But that's not possible. A couple of other notes: Ugg is not going to did not make the
Mm.
trip. Ugga the dog.
Yeah.
It was too strenuous on Ugga. Ugga the 10th or
Well, he didn't
20th
have
or
to
whatever.
walk, Chris. He didn't have to walk
Well,
there.
I
We're aware
know,
of that,
but
right?
yeah. Well, the Silers over in Savannah, of course, which supply the Uggas for the University of Georgia. He was actually Ugga was he was there when Georgia won over Oklahoma in the Rose Bowl. He was in Los Angeles
Mhm.
for that game back 2017. But he's a little older now. He's 9 year old. He's 9 years old, and in dog
Mm.
years, that's Social Security. He's on Social Security, and so Ugg is going to watch the game on television, and I'm sure somewhere down the line in the game, we're going to have a picture of Ugga in the living room at the Silers watching Georgia play in this game. Also, of course, in the Peach Bowl game, we had Darnell Washington getting hurt. He twisted his ankle, having that ankle issue. I don't know if you've seen anything on this. Apparently, he's going to try to play, and one of the motivations for him to try to play, I understand, is that his mother and sister have never seen him play in person while he's been a student at the University of
Mhm.
Georgia, and this will be the first time that they will see him play. So, when Mama's in the stands and you want to play, I got a feeling we're going to see Darnell on the field, don't you?
Look, I mean, kid from out west like that. I think he's from Las Vegas, Nevada,
Yeah.
is where he played his high school ball. Uh, it means a little bit more. And listen, Georgia can use them too. I mean, we saw how they struggled a little bit in the run blocking without Darnell Washington. Oscar Delp's a fantastic talent, no doubt about it. But he's not Darnell Washington. I mean, he's not a left tackle playing tight end. So there you go. There's that. Not many guys are. But I think that's really
Yeah.
cool. I mean, look, Washington, I was told this by a good friend that was at the Georgia Auburn basketball game. What was it, Wednesday
Yeah.
of this previous weekend? That Darnell was it was before Georgia, or Tuesday. It was before Georgia had left to go to LA. And Darnell was at the game, at the basketball game with no boot on. And so that
Yeah.
was something that, we kind of then they felt like, hey, this is something where he might be able to play this game. But he's a huge part. I mean, even when he's not catching the football, it's really big, literally and
Yeah.
physically, to see him be able to play this game. So that's a huge advantage for Georgia.
Yeah, he's a big kid. Now I understand as well that Chaz Chambliss that was injured against Ohio State, he's good to go, and Robert Beal Jr. He had some issues with cramping, and I think he's good to go as well. And Georgia seems to Lad McConkey still is a hobbled a little bit, a
Mhm.
tad with the issue that he's been having, but you're not going to keep Lad out of this game. Listen, if you're able to go at 50%,
You're playing.
60%, you're going to get out there on the field. Back in the old days, and I go back a little ways, but back in the old days, we'd say rub some dirt on it and put a piece of duct tape on it and let's go. You know, so I think you're going to see Georgia at full strength. Captains for tonight's game for the University of Georgia: center Cedric Van Pran, safety Christopher Smith, defensive end Nolan Smith. Of course, Nolan's been injured and has not played. He's one of
Coach
the
Nolan
captains,
Smith.
Coach Nolan Smith, and what an
Yeah.
impressive guy he
Oh, man.
is.
Yeah.
And the other quarterback will be, or the other captain rather, will be quarterback Stetson Bennett in the game. And so I've got 37-14. You've got what? What was your prediction?
I had 38-24 was my final.
38-24. Okay. All right. So that's
Not too
pretty
far
good. And
off.
we always ask our guys if they want to give us a prediction. We're getting we're getting a lot of guys chipping in here, or TCU is going down. The mailman. And by the way, did you see? I don't know if you saw this, but there's a movement to honor Stetson Bennett at the beginning of the fourth quarter by
Okay.
everyone taking an old piece of mail, and at the beginning of the fourth quarter, Georgia fans holding up the old piece of mail, just a mail, something you got in the
Mhm.
mail, to hold it up to honor Stetson Bennett. So,
Well,
what
I'll
do
tell
you
you
think?
this. It depends on how the game's gone until that point. That'll be a big
Yeah,
factor. And
right.
two, I bet you Kirby Smart wants none of that.
Yeah.
Because he's going to be coaching no matter what the score is to the end. Have you seen the movement? His new commercials that he's doing, the Milkman. Have you seen
Yeah.
that as well? Yeah,
That is so funny.
it's good stuff. It's good stuff.
Yeah. NIL. Here we go.
There you go.
You know, I and yeah, I was talking to my wife, I try to help her understand this stuff. Not that I fully understand a lot of it, about NIL and the transfer portal. And I was telling her about the NIL, and she says, "Well, why don't you sign one of those deals?" And okay, well, maybe I'll try. But when she started talking about putting me in the transfer portal, I changed the subject. I said, "This is not
I
going to
haven't
work."
had that conversation yet. I haven't had that conversation yet as my wife walks right past the behind the screen. No, she hasn't
I
she hasn't said that yet.
Well, there you go. But listen, we have a lot of fun together. I'm watching the ESPN screen. Who do you think, Coach Corso is going to make his prediction? Who do you think he's going to predict? He likes to mix it up sometime. Who do you think he's going to pick?
He does. Look, I'm gonna predict he goes with TCU
Okay,
because I think that TCU is everyone's darling right now, and
right.
Georgia fans need to understand this too. Look, I grew up a Georgia fan. My whole family grew up Georgia fans. When you get in the business of covering teams, you have a rooting interest in the team you cover because you want this, you want to cover. Everyone wants to cover a good team. But Georgia, if they win this game, they're going to become what Alabama was, and it's
Yeah,
everyone can't stand to see Alabama win. And I think
right.
across the country, Georgia's starting to trend towards that way. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think that the majority of the country outside of the great state of Georgia is going to want TC to win this game, and I think Corso he mixes it up. That's for sure. But there was a long period of time where Georgia fans wanted Corso to not pick Georgia. It was like a bad omen. So we'll see
That's
what he
true.
goes with.
That's true. And I did see somewhere, where what his record was of how many times he got it right and how many times he got it wrong. And most of the time, according to his record, he gets it right, pretty good. But every now and then he's not quite square on what he ought to be doing. So I tell you what, Bryce, okay. So the season, actually, I guess the 2023 season starts tonight. We're in the new year, and so there you go. The season starts here, and then we there's another recruiting time, and but then you get into the spring drills, and you have the spring game, and then there's the long summer when we can commiserate together over the Braves, and try to pull them through. And I don't know who's going to play shortstop. My grandson plays baseball. I may just go ahead and get him up there and let him play for the Braves. But here we go. But actually, college football is a year-round thing. You may not have the games, but boy, you got recruiting. Oh my word, recruiting. Somebody told me the ABCs of college football is always be recruiting. And yeah, Georgia does a great job. Now you're going to be covering LSU for 247 Sports, of course, and we hope LSU wins every game other than against Georgia, and other than in any game that might hurt Georgia if they win it. So there you go. I'm pulling for you, my friend. But I tell you what, LSU had a pretty good season, and it's going to be interesting in the SEC West. You got LSU, you got Alabama. You got, I don't know if the dumpster fire at Texas A&M is over or not. But
they got Bobby Petrino now, Chris. So
did they hire Petrino? I saw
so
where they were
everything's
talking
fixed
about
because he's got great things about him happened.
Yeah, I know. What did he stay with the Falcons? What, a week?
Oh, jeez.
He was there a year, I think, with the Falcons, and then he had that. He's actually, if he'll behave himself, he's actually a pretty good coach.
He really is a good offensive mind. And the SEC West has the propensity to be very interesting next year. I mean, Alabama's got to find a quarterback. LSU is returning a lot of talent. I think obviously everyone thought, LSU, what would they be like under Brian Kelly in year one? And now you think, what can he build there? I mean, that's one of the biggest things I'm excited about getting down there and covering and seeing how that program can grow, because facilities and money wise is never an issue down there. I mean, they've got top tier stuff. So it'll be interesting. And it's, obviously Georgia's race over there in the SEC East. I mean, we'll see kind of, Georgia's races to lose. Where does Tennessee's Joe Milton the answer? South Carolina, what do they return? They've lost a lot in the portal. And then, the Gators. I mean, what are they going to look like? So, and I don't think anyone's talking too much about Kentucky, Vanderbilt, or Missouri. So we'll see.
Yeah, I know. I know. Speaking of the portal, LSU, I understand, picked up a couple of guys in defensive backs in the portal that looked very good. I mean, looked like very good pickup. What a strange. I don't know if I call it strange, but what an interesting thing. The transfer portal grew out of the pandemic. It grew out of the pandemic, and the COVID pandemic kind of shaped the transfer portal. Now we all talk about it. What an effect on college football that has had, where you can go from one school to the other, and you don't have to sit out a year like you had to do in the old days, and you can go play and you can have at it. And I am seeing where some think it's hurting high school recruiting. It kind of puts. I think that's true at some schools. I don't think it's true at all schools. At top tier schools, I don't think it's hurting them from getting recruits. What do you think about the portal? Anything that needs to be changed about it, or we just got to let it go? What do you think?
Well, I think part of it too is it's going to run its course. I mean, the influx of the players that we've seen in the portal over the past 2 years have been historic. There's no doubt about that. I think that in the coming years, you're going to see. It's a lot. I'll say this: it's like a lot of things in life, Chris. When we get really far over here on the end of the spectrum, there's something
Yeah.
else happens that kind of brings it back to the middle. And so I think that we're going to see that in this situation. Where, the portal's going to kind of be all the hype as it is right now. I mean, it'll still be utilized, but I think the influx of the first couple of years is going to be kind of an outlier, in my opinion, of how it's going to be. But I'll say this, I do like it in the sense of I am on the kid's side in the situation of when a coach can leave at any moment. Um, I mean, look, that changes a lot of things for the student athlete. It really
Right.
does. And so, and even having worked, around the FCS level with myself working on the broadcast team with Mercer the past 2 seasons, the opportunity for kids to transfer up from the FCS level to the FBS. I mean, look, that's bettering another opportunity for you. It's the idea of capitalism. And it's like, let me get the best opportunity that I can. And so, I'm for that. I think that it's something good, but I think that the hysteria around it will die down in the next couple of years. I don't see it being this thing that, every single year we're talking about thousands of players entering the portal. Because the truth is, in this sense, you're going to have a lot of kids that enter the portal under false pretenses. They don't find a home. And I hate that. I hate that. They think they can find, what's the saying? It's not always greener pastures.
Right.
It's one of those things. So it'll be interesting to watch. And then just kind of touch on the high school recruiting. I've talked with a lot of high school coaches across the state of Georgia, having a good pulse on kind of recruiting in this state, which, as we all know, is a talent-rich state for football. And there is a sense of where high school recruiting coordinators are telling their kids, if you're outside the top 200 players in the country, if you get an offer, man, you can't just blow it off. You can't say I'm going to
Right.
wait for something better, because you truly don't know when that offer can be pulled, and those situations are coming. I know I know kids firsthand who have had opportunities and said, I'm not willing to commit to it right now. And a couple weeks later, it's gone because said team got a player from a portal they filled in. So it does have an effect on the kids, the high school kids. So I hope, for the sake of that, it's something that kind of dies down and we can see. Because look, National Signing Day is like a holiday. We think you and I talked about
Yeah.
this. I mean, it's like a holiday, especially with
Yeah.
24/7 sports. So a lot of fun stuff going on around the game, and it's continuing to change. It'll be a lot different, Chris, when you and I hop on this show in 10 more years.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm telling you, 10 years. Okay. I'm thinking
Mark
about
it
the next
down.
10 minutes. Speaking of that, yeah, we'll close with this. So, okay, what is your tailgate meal tonight? What you gonna, okay? You got to prepare yourself. What is your tailgate meal as we get ready for this big game between Georgia and TCU?
Yeah, no, of course. I hope I didn't get in trouble. My wife walked out of the door to go pick the food up while we were on this show. So
Okay.
I don't know if I'm in trouble for not
Okay.
going
Well,
with
just
her. We'll
blame
see.
me. Just
I'll just
tell
blame
her it
you.
was
That's
me.
no problem.
There you go.
Um,
There you go.
no, look, I'm a wings guy. I'm a wings guy. I
Okay.
love wings.
I
And
like it.
so drums or flats does not matter to me.
I like it.
But yeah, we're going to be doing a nice little spread of wings. And then, I'm the guy that also likes the celery and carrots with ranch. I mean, I
Okay.
like the side additions as well. So we'll be having that. And I will be having a glass of sweet tea with it. I will tell you that much right
There you
there.
go.
That's so
Very
it's
good.
going to be a fun night. I'm excited. And like you said, it's the final college football game of the year for this season. And so it's a sad thing, but I think Georgia fans, much like last year, will be able to stomach the end of football season a lot better if it can end with a championship.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, I suggested to my dear bride that we have frog legs tonight.
Mm.
Um, but then I understood that a horned frog is not actually a frog; it's a lizard. And so,
Doesn't it shoots blood out of its eyes, Chris? Have you seen
yeah,
this?
I
I
mean,
mean, it's like
I
it's like a
know
mythical
it's.
creature. I mean, it's
I mean, it's a disgusting animal, is what it is.
yes.
Bulldog, I can love. Horned frog, how can you hug a horned frog? So
I
anyway.
don't want to try.
No, I don't either. Well, Bryce, thank you for being with us, my man, and we'll talk to you again soon. And go Tigers in the days to come with
Appreciate it.
LSU. And tonight, we're all about go Dogs, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Appreciate it as always. Love being on you guys' show, and we always have a great time.
All right, talk to you soon.